Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Wiltfong Whiparound. I'm Grace Remington with our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. Lots to get to today, and stick around until the end because we're previewing commitments from some of the top prospects in the country, and these are decisions you can see live only on 24/7 Sports right here. All right, Steve, let's start in Ann Arbor, where the consensus is Michigan is a playoff contender, but they've always been chasing Alabama and Georgia. The difference this year is they finally have a quarterback, a playmaker, instead of a game manager in J.J. McCarthy. But we're also seeing Jim Harbaugh's skill in developing some of his lesser-known players. We saw highlights from the second and third stringers in the win against UConn, showing some depth there. And then there's guys like defensive tackle Chris Jenkins, who came in as a three-star, and now he's a starter. So, Steve, still work to be done on this 2023 class. 14 commits, no 5 stars, 7 4-stars, 7 3-stars. Where do you see Harbaugh maximizing this class, and why is this something he does so well?
Well, I think, you look at Michigan, like you said, they've cracked the code of player development, in my opinion. They've done as good a job as anybody in the program of taking a young man when he walks in the door at 18 and maximizing his potential by the time he leaves as a senior at 22 years old. And it really culminated and came together this past season when they beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten championship, and made the college football playoff. And I think that J.J. McCarthy is a guy that can really elevate this program from here. As you said, they've had in the Coach Harbaugh era, which had 3 10-win seasons going into last year when they finally broke through and won 12 ball games. It's been a game manager at the position. And I think as you're trying to shave those extra 2 strokes on your golf game, or that extra 1/10 of a second in the 100-meter dash to be the best in the world. Those are the hardest strokes to shave, to go from 68 to 66 or 10-0 to 9-9. And that's kind of the air Michigan's breathing right now as they try and find 2 more wins at the end of a college football season. And the way that they're recruiting quarterback and getting J.J. McCarthy in there. He's a guy that was as a 24/7 Sports composite 5-star, I believe, has the skill set to be a game changer instead of the game manager that we've been accustomed to seeing at Michigan beforehand. But yeah, I mean, you look at what they've been able to develop in every position room under Coach Harbaugh has been fantastic. And even in this recruiting class, you look at guys like Inau Etta and Collins Achiapong, and you're talking about guys that are 6'5", 260 pounds, and 6'7", 254 pounds. And you look at Michigan, who's developed the defensive line position as well as anybody in college football in the Harbaugh era. You look at those guys' traits and you're like, man, those 2 could be the next special guys at the point of attack for Michigan. Now they're in on some big time guys moving forward to catapult this class even higher in the rankings, but certainly like the foundation of what's in the fold for them in 2023. And again, I think when you look at this program, player development is their hallmark. And it's why they're one of the top 5 or 6 programs in college football right now, heading into late September.
All right, on the topic of player development, it helps when you have a group of guys who have been there, done that. There are 8 former Michigan players on this coaching staff, and they're ranging from teams from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and more recent years. Taking a look at the graphic here, there's Jim Harbaugh, obviously, Mike Hart's the running backs coach. He's the all-time leading rusher at Michigan. He received a lot of Heisman votes back in the day. Ron Bellamy, the wide receiver coach. Mike Elston, he was actually just at Notre Dame. He left when Brian Kelly did, so that's got to affect the recruiting footprint in some way. And then looking at the guys who are in player development, Chris Bryant played more recently there. Same with Denard Robinson. So, Steve, when you have these guys who know the Michigan way, how does that not only impact the development of current players, but also help recruits buy into the program?
Well, another program that's like that, that's had a ton of success and won a couple national championships, is Clemson, right? You look at the Clemson coaching staff and off-field people, and it's guys that are so passionate about Clemson because they went there and played there, and it means a lot to them. And I think that's obviously the same at Michigan, and that really impacts your culture. And Coach Harbaugh is obviously a big culture guy, but the buy-in that he has for his staff, the passion the blood, sweat, and tears that those guys put into that program, it means so much to them. And that culture, they set the foundation, and it rubs off on the players. And then you look at Michigan's locker room, and you see guys like Blake Corum and Ronnie Bell, Eric All, Luke Schoonemaker, and Ryan Hayes on the O-line, and then flipping over to defense, Mozzie Smith, Michael Barrett, and DJ Turner. There's so many great leaders on this Michigan football team, and I think it's because of the culture. And so your leaders, your senior leaders, your upperclassmen, when these freshmen, when these young blue chippers come on the campus, or these other guys that were gems that Michigan found on the trail that were maybe looked over by other schools, they come in, and the tone is set from the staff to the upperclassmen that this is the way we do things at Michigan. This is our culture, and everybody falls in line. And I think a big part of that is the staff that Coach Harbaugh's put together. A lot of Michigan men that have a lot of pride in that school and want to help it find those extra wins at the end of the season.
Okay, so they got the culture, they got the development. If you want to win big, you still need the raw talent. You still need blue chips on the roster. And one of those guys is visiting the Big House this weekend. Nicholas Harbor, a 5-star athlete, one of the best in the country. He just made his visit to South Carolina last weekend. How's he feeling about this upcoming trip?
Yeah, 6'5", 225 pounds, the #1 athlete recruit in the country, could play receiver, tight end, defensive end, outside linebacker. I think he's leaning towards playing offense, and all the schools recruiting him have kind of pivoted to that, which I think is a good thing for Michigan, because he's already built a great relationship with Ron Bellamy, the receivers coach, and Grant Newsome, the tight ends coach. 2 Michigan grads, as you said, that are courting this young man to come to Michigan. And talking to his dad today, they're really excited to get the academic tour of Michigan. This is Nicholas's 3rd time on campus. It'll be the 2nd time for Dad, but the 1st time really looking at the football program, because the last time was a track and field deal. And when I say track and field, y'all know by now, Nicholas Harbor is one of the elite sprinters in the country. Track's going to be a major factor in his decision. This is a young man that aspires to play football at the highest level, run in the Olympics, and then when it's all said and done, be a doctor at the end of that road. So getting the academic tour at Michigan is going to be big, and I know that Michigan's got big plans to showcase what they do academically. He's obviously going to get a chance to go to the game. He went to the South Carolina game last week. That was his dad's first ever college football game, and he said that the stadium was vibrating with 80,000 folks inside South Carolina Stadium. We know, Grace, at Michigan, it's going to be well over 100,000 people inside the Big House. So that could be a different experience in itself right there as Michigan opens this Big Ten season against Maryland. It's homecoming weekend in Ann Arbor. So I think there's going to be a lot of pageantry on the Wolverines campus and for them to soak in. And they're going to get there Saturday morning. So Michigan's going to get 2 full days with Nicholas in the Sunday and get a chance to get around the other recruits, players on the team. I know that's something that Nicholas has enjoyed at South Carolina. So an opportunity to see if he's like-minded with the players in the Michigan locker room. And I think Michigan's in good shape. Obviously, he's got an official visit scheduled to LSU October 7th. That's the only other trip he has scheduled. But I think Michigan has everything he's looking for in a school. So we'll see how this weekend visit goes.
Yeah, it's going to be an awesome atmosphere there. And a couple of top recruits just got to experience it, Chris Peel and Caden McDonald. Now the Wolverines are eyeing several O-line targets. I know the big men love what they saw on Saturday from the current Michigan O-line, setting up J.J. McCarthy nicely for all those bubble screens. They're one of the best groups blocking the edge in college football. So what's the outlook for some of these recruits coming up?
And I apologize, the allergies. It's about to be 90 degrees here this week in the middle of summer in the Midwest. My throat is itching right here, but Michigan, they're itching to get several more offensive linemen. They're in the thick of it for DJ Chester. They're in the mix for Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu. They already have 2 good ones in the fold, Amir Herring and Evan Link, but offensive line, a big priority for Michigan down the stretch. But Nicholas Harbor and Nathan Afobe, another offensive lineman visiting this weekend, they're the relevant guys right now.
Meanwhile, Michigan's top rival is hosting a highly sought-after recruit this weekend. 5-star prospect Keon Keeley making the trip to Ohio State to watch the Buckeyes and Wisconsin. He decommitted from Notre Dame in August. Now he's making his 2nd trip to Columbus in the last 4 weeks. Steve, is there a reason he's taking these trips so close together?
Well, I think he's super excited about Ohio State. Got a message from him today. He's excited to get up there for the blackout game against Wisconsin. It's going to be a tremendous atmosphere inside the horseshoe for Ohio State as they try and roll the Badgers. And the Buckeyes, they have the nation's #5 recruiting class. They really only have like 3 major targets right now. They're all defensive linemen. They have a chance to land them all. And I think they're really I think that they're getting a lot of momentum with Keon Keeley. He had a great visit, his official visit for the win over Notre Dame. He's really connected with recruits in Ohio State's class. I think he really fits in with the players at Ohio State. He's extremely comfortable in Columbus. And his mom had a good trip up there. She talked about how it was an awesome culture under Ryan Day. Larry Johnson certainly has resonated with all 3 of these remaining targets: Keon Keeley, Damon Wilson, Mateo Uagalele, and Keon Keeley coming back. I've talked to a couple people around Ohio State that feel like the Buckeyes are in excellent position. That crystal ball really flooded to Alabama after he decommitted from Notre Dame. And I do think that's where the pulse of that recruitment was at that time. He had taken a couple visits to Alabama, but nobody should sleep on Ohio State for Keon Keeley. If he ends up in the Buckeyes class, I will not be surprised. Now, he has an official visit for Alabama scheduled for later in the season, and certainly they're in the thick of it. Florida's the 3rd school at the table, but I think Ohio State's the biggest challenger to Alabama. And again, I think there's a couple people with knowledge of this recruitment that think that Ohio State wins this thing out in the end. So we'll see how this weekend goes. I think if Keon knew what he was going to do, he would already be decided. So still some I's to dot and T's to cross at the very least. And Ohio State hosting one of their top targets for their Big Ten opener against Wisconsin.
All right, let's go to the Sunshine State now. It's been a while since the Big 3 have returned to prominence. Miami and Florida starting new coaching regimes, but FSU and Mike Norvell have one thing that those other schools don't, and that's a perfect 3-0 record. The comeback win against Louisville, I think, is indicative of the culture change there. That was the type of win I don't think the Noles would have won 2 years ago. We also saw some unsung heroes step up, like Tate Rodemaker when Jordan Travis went down with an injury. So how does that affect a recruit's mindset when they can see there's more than one path here to becoming the guy?
Well, I think they see a program that's on the come up, and it's a program that's got depth. It's got some substance to it. It's more than just a handful of players, and for them to go on the road at night and beat a Louisville team with QB2 in the ball game, I think it shows a lot about the trajectory of the program. And look, this is something that the Florida State staff has been selling on the recruiting trail to recruits is, hey, we are a team on the rise. And to start the season 3-0, and now you have a night game against Boston College this weekend. Inside Doak, I heard over 70,000 tickets have already been sold, so darn near a sellout at this point. There's a lot of juice and excitement around Florida State for the first time in a couple years on the field. And it's starting to really line up on the recruiting trail. They have the number 22 class in 2023. They're number 2 in 2024. And it's an opportunity these next 2 weeks to beat Boston College and then a ranked Wake Forest team, perhaps. Wake Forest plays Clemson this weekend. That'll really get the needle moving, Grace.
Okay, so they're hosting a couple of top recruits this weekend, Jordan Hall and DJ Chester, and they're also trying to flip a couple guys. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, Jordan Hall has been one of their top targets on the board for years now at the position, and they're recruiting against Georgia and Florida, among others, for him. I think Ohio State's in there as well, but Florida State, this type of season that they're having, and Jordan's talked about Coach Hagens in the past to me and his affinity for Florida State's defensive line coach. They're in the middle of this one. And then DJ Chester has built a great relationship with Alex Atkins, Florida State's offensive line coach. And when you look at the strength of the Florida State class in 2022, it's on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And those are 2 of their best recruiters, Coach Hagens and Coach Atkins. And those are major positions of need for Florida State to go from a up-and-coming program to being a championship contender again. You got to win at the point of attack. And Jordan Hall and DJ Chester are as important recruits as they come. And Florida State, they're talking to a lot of guys that are committed elsewhere. A couple guys that I mentioned today on Knowles 247 in an article was Penn State commit Conrad Hussey from Fort Lauderdale, St. Thomas Aquinas, and then another in-state guy, Kylan Webb, who's committed to Clemson. But I think a lot of recruits that are committed elsewhere are picking up the phone for Florida State. And if they can continue to rattle off wins, big wins, beat BC, beat Clemson, maybe those answers become a little more exciting than just keeping the lines warm.
So speaking of opportunities for the Noles, they could land another commitment before Saturday. Blake Nicholson, a four-star linebacker, has FSU in his top 3 schools. And if you're watching this, you can also watch his commitment live tonight, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. Steve, what can you tell us about Blake?
Well, he's one of the more coveted linebackers in the country and one of the top players on Florida State's board, regardless of position. They're battling Oregon for him, and Blake returned to Oregon this past weekend. But tag team in this story with my colleague Brandon Huffman, who will host the commitment tonight. We both still like Florida State. The intel is still pointing towards Tallahassee for Blake Nicholson, and would be another significant pickup for Coach Norvell and company as they continue to button up that front 7. And I think when you look at Florida State's class, I know I said the strength of it was the defensive line and offensive line, particularly the defensive line. Grace Keldrick Falk and Keith Sampson, those are guys that I think are going to be stars. That Florida State on the line of scrimmage, All-America type potential. With the traits that they bring and guys that can really play dominant football for Florida State up front. And a guy like Blake Nicholson coming in and playing behind them on the next level is a combination that could be special for that defense.
Another decision coming up, 4-star wide receiver Hykeem Williams out of South Florida will be committing live on CBS Sports HQ this Friday. Steve, any idea where he's leaning?
Yeah, and Andrew Ivins from Preps to Pros, the Preps to Pros show that can be seen at this time on Mondays and Wednesdays on the 24/7 Sports channel, will be a big part of that broadcast. He was just at Texas A&M this past weekend and talking to some people that spent time with him in College Station. Still feel like there's a chance he could end up playing for Texas A&M. You know, that's where the 24/7 Sports crystal ball is. Sounds like he had a fantastic visit. Like I did a story on the atmosphere in College Station over the weekend, and the 12th man delivered. You know, the recruits love that, and Hykeem Williams was part of that and certainly saw what that's like at Texas A&M is truly unique to what most schools offer from fan support standpoint. But seeing the need on offense for more playmakers, I think is enticing for him regarding Texas A&M. But look, we've been saying it on Wiltfong Whiparound. Andrew Ivins has been saying it on Preps to Pros. We've been writing it. Florida State's really got a lot of momentum in this recruitment. And even prior to the season, we said Florida State was in a good spot for Hykeem. And I think I said on an episode, like, the table is set. You just now have to deliver. And Florida State has delivered 3 wins. And I think there's a lot of buzz with Hykeem and Florida State right now. So those are the 2 programs I'm looking the hardest at. You still got Pitt and Miami and Georgia swinging in that one. But Texas A&M, great visit this weekend. Florida State, they've had a lot of momentum for a few weeks now. And, you know, both those schools are still chopping wood there early in the week in trying to gain his commitment on Friday.
All right, Alabama won the on-field competition against Texas. Now they're squaring off again off the field. Jalen Hale set to make his decision between these two. You have any intel there?
Yeah, been digging on that one the last 2 days. And most of my intel still favors the Texas Longhorns for Jalen Hale. He also took an official visit to Texas A&M this past weekend, but I think that most of the buzz is centering around Texas and Alabama here down the stretch. Had a great official visit to Alabama a few weeks ago, then took his official visit to Texas. And I think that Coach Sarkisian's offense and the way he's able to get receivers open schematically is something that's really exciting to him. Coach Brendan Marion and him have really connected. Coach Marion went to his latest game, and Texas has really been on him hard. And I think that there's a couple of recruits where I've mentioned the Arch Manning effect, and Jalen Hale is one of them. And so I think that's another exciting deal of coming to Texas and perhaps playing with Arch. But one thing that we never do on Whiparound, Grace, we never sleep on Alabama. Even if the intel we're getting is favoring another school, if Alabama's the other hat on the table, I can't cross them off. Nobody's told, so at this point, my intel favors Texas, but if he picked Alabama, I certainly wouldn't be surprised.
Hey, anyone in this industry knows, never disrespect the Tide. We're going to have Nick Saban ranting at us on this show. All right, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Wiltfong Whiparound. For Steve Wiltfong, I'm Grace Remington. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to our producers behind the scenes, Chris, Jason, and Sonlay. If you want more insight like this, please remember to like and comment on this video and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel for recruiting news that you can't get anywhere else. We'll see you back here on Thursday.